Thank you. Wow, what an entrance there. What an applause. Wow, this is great. This feels good leaving the halls of Congress where we can't agree on anything coming here to this. Man, David, thank you. First, just want to thank David for this opportunity to be here, an opportunity to speak with you all, and really just talk to you a little bit about what you're about to do tomorrow in Storming the Hill. And figured I'd tell a few stories about my attempts at bipartisanship, because boy is it tough right now. Really can't stress enough David Bradley and everything that he's done for so many folks in this country. I think you all know it, but just to reiterate, the programs and what he's been fighting for were truly on the brink of collapse almost 20 years ago. He saved them. He saved them. But the truth is, he had some people helping him out, right? There's a couple people here that were helping out, and this is a team effort. And you all, over the course of your couple days up here, I know have been talking about your approach to meet with members of Congress and the stories you're going to tell and going to lobby them. I can't tell you how important that is part of governing. As you can imagine, we're faced with 15, 20, 25 issues in a day. And you're going left, right, sideways, and you're all over the place. The meetings that you have, and when you all get an opportunity to sit with a member, with someone on their staff, and tell that story of how a program that you're fighting for, whether it's Head Start, whatever it may be, has made a real difference, a tangible difference in somebody's life, they're going to remember that. And when it comes time to vote for that in a week or a month or a year, whatever it may be, there's a good chance they're going to think back to that meeting they had with you. And you're going to be able to tell them about a constituent, right, in their district whose life you changed. Because at the end of the day, that's why I do this. That's why a lot of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle do this, because they want to make a difference. Of course, there's bad apples and folks out there that I won't name anybody might have the wrong reasons for doing this, but there really are a lot of good people up here that are working really hard. So you've got to tell them those stories. You've got to bring it home to them on how what you're doing is really making a difference, so they remember that when they're voting. So I want to thank you for taking the time and doing your work up here to help out so many people back home. So thank you. Also, I heard there's a group from Florida. Where's the Florida group at? Any Floridians here? Couple? Okay. Well, I see a couple. Well, all right. So, David might have mentioned a recent announcement where I'm running for the Senate. So, wherever you're at in Florida, I'm going to be calling on you. So, David in his introduction mentioned that I'm a CPA. So, I like numbers and I get a little excited about numbers. So, I'll start with the number 9. And that's how many CPAs there are in Congress. Coincidentally, that's the approval rating of Congress right now. So when you all gave me that round of applause walking in, I was shocked, because with approval ratings like that, we don't normally get that sort of standing ovation. So, but when you look at DC, you look at some of the problems. As David said, my background's a CPA, small business owner, and I got here with the intent to change the world, right? At the end of the day, why else would you do this? And I got elected, and first thing that happened is they said, well, Patrick, look, you're a Democrat. We're going to put you in the room over here with all the other Democrats. So you're a Republican, we're going to put you in this room with all the Republicans. And for basically the first 3 weeks that I was elected, they had the party separated. So what in the world is that? In your business, in your family, anything you do in life, you have to get to know each other. It's based on that foundation of trust and relationships. You don't have to agree on everything, but maybe understanding where somebody's from, something about their kids, their background, you might find some common ground. So I said, I'm not going to sit in this room blocked off for 3 weeks and not even meet the colleagues on the other side of the aisle. So I was lucky enough to meet a freshman Republican, and we went to dinner one night, first couple of weeks, and we started talking about why we ran for office, and we said, you know what? There's a lot of things that we actually agree on. And we started talking about our fiscal house and what we could do to get that in order. And we started going back and forth on some ideas about tax reform, talked about Social Security and Medicare, how we ensure those programs are there for generations to come. Talked about waste, fraud, abuse, duplication. And we said, wow, there's a lot of stuff we agree on here. So we went to some colleagues of ours in the freshman class. Ended up growing this group to about 30–40% of the freshman class. So we had a sizable group that would meet every 2, 3, 4 weeks and talk about what we could do to get our fiscal house in order. And with that much agreement, we said, what in the heck are they doing up there in leadership this whole time? If we've been here for a few weeks, few months, and we've already got this much agreement, what the heck's going on? So we started putting forward some bills and some proposals. And the approach we took was, let's talk about what we agree on first, not fight with each other about what we disagree on. And if we can find a few things to agree on, maybe we can build that trust. You know, maybe we can kind of get that rolling into some bigger issues. So the first bill that we dropped was called the SAVE Act. And I won't bore you too much with it, but I want it to be clear of just how easy and how much legislation there's out there that is common sense. So we identified last year $330 billion, with a B, of wasteful, duplicative, or fraudulent government spending. $330 billion. It's called the SAVE Act. This year we reintroduced it, and this year's total is $479 billion of wasteful spending. Now that's your taxpayer money. That's all of our taxpayer money. This isn't a Republican or a Democratic or an independent issue. It's something that, as Americans, we need to do a better job. Right? And we can be more efficient and making sure that the money that is coming up here to DC is being spent wisely. So that's been our focus within this group, is going for the things that we can agree on. And that's what we started. And from there, we've moved on to some other topics and some other bills that we've been able to find agreement on. But there's a lot of things up here that, unfortunately, as you all know, the partisanship, the finger pointing, gets in the way. I probably shouldn't tell this story, but it's such a perfect example of what's wrong up here. My second week when I was first elected, I'm getting in the elevator, right? And I'm excited. I got a new suit on, you know, I'm excited. And you wear these little pins if you're a member of Congress, right? So there happened to be a gentleman in the elevator that had the same pin on. I didn't know who he was or where he was from. How you doing, sir? I'm Patrick Murphy. I'm from Florida. And he looked at me and he kind of squinted and he pulled out his cell phone. Started texting. Ignoring me, and I'm looking like maybe he's about to shake my hand, maybe he forgot, I don't know. Next thing you know, 30 seconds, we go up 4 floors, and he gets off, and I get off, and never. So, wow, that was interesting. So I remember his face. I go back, look at the book of members, and I won't name anybody here, but it turned out he was best friends with the individual that I defeated. Right? And he wouldn't even shake my hand. Now, think of that. Can you imagine doing that in your business, in your family, in anything? That's terrible. It doesn't matter what party you are. You got to have that sort of trust. You got to have those relationships. Another group that David mentioned, I'm involved in, one of the co-chairs, is a group called No Labels. And that's a bigger group than the one that I started in the freshman class. And in that group, a lot of what they've done is budget-oriented, but a lot of it is also process. The reason is that there's been attempts at bipartisanship at some of these bills, but the process, in large part, is what's preventing it from moving. So let's start trying to change the process. So one example of that is saying that every bill that comes to the floor to be voted on must be what's called a clean bill. You see, what happens is legislation will come up for a vote. It'll have, 5, 6, 7, a bunch of other things attached to it that have nothing to do with the core, right? That principal meaning of that bill just happen to be added to it. So what happens, for example, is they might put something in there that says, if you don't vote for the core piece of the bill, then you vote for a pay raise for yourself. Well, that's weird. I don't want a pay raise. I never asked for one. But I don't agree with this legislation. So then what happens is you go back to your districts and it's campaign season. Right? Next thing you know, you see a commercial that says, so-and-so congressperson voted to raise their paycheck 5 times. Well, it might not be the whole truth. Now, I'm oversimplifying this, but that's the kind of stuff that gets put in legislation. And that leads to a breakdown in trust, where the common sense things that we need to be fighting for cannot get heard. I think most people in this room, most people I talk to, agree that the partisanship in our country is one of the biggest problems we have. And most people I talk to have gotten to the point where they say both parties are so messed up right now. You know, we just want people going to solve problems. And one of the biggest problems we have in our country is, unfortunately, something that you all know far too well about. And that's the disappearing middle class. Right? That's that growing disparity between rich and poor in our country. And there's so many things that fall under that can help address it. Things like infrastructure, things like tax reform, education. A lot of programs out there that can help. But I don't believe this institution has done enough to strengthen the middle class. You see, that's, to me, what makes our country so different, is that we have that strong middle class. We have that economic engine. We've got to do everything in our power right now to rebuild that. And we've got to make sure that we're not giving, you know, handouts, but we're giving hand-ups to people, right? That we are helping people achieve whatever it is they want in life. And the programs that a lot of you here know very well about, I don't need to reiterate, you know them, give those opportunities to people that might not have had all the breaks that we had. So there's a lot of common sense legislation out there that we've got to get back to solving those common sense problems. And I believe if we have some more folks willing to do that, that we're going to see some things done. It's not perfect up here. When I just left the floor, we're voting on several budgets right now. By and large, all these budgets are very partisan. You know, certain groups go and they sit in their rooms and their caucuses and they draw something up and they don't even talk to the other side about it. It's their budget, it's their way or the highway. And if you don't vote for it, so be it. I mean, unfortunately, we haven't had a real budget in this country in years. Can you imagine in your companies and anything you've done in your life, not just your family, your household, you know what you're going to be making one year and what you can spend and you budget it out. It's simple. The federal government, with trillions of dollars of outlays and, you know, tax income coming in, doesn't have that real budget. That's no way to manage. That is irresponsible. And one of the bills that the No Labels group put forward back to that process, you know, thing I was telling you about, was a bill that said, no budget, no pay. If you do not have a budget, members of Congress do not get paid. That to me that's common sense. That's one of our core functions up here, is passing a budget. Everything else falls under that. All the different programs fall under that. So that's something that I'm going to continue pushing because it makes sense to me. And I hope we'll force people to compromise, to find that common ground. Now, the community action agencies and what you all are doing here, Head Start, all these different programs are responsible for helping millions and millions of Americans. As I said, David has been such a critical part of not only saving those programs, but spending his life dedicating so much of his time walking around, getting to know members of Congress, you know, folks in the Senate and the House, on both sides of the aisle, to fight for something he's passionate about. But as I said, he needs your help. You know, he needs all of you. He needs the troops to go to the Hill, to have that passion, to tell that story, to remind the members of Congress what it is they're doing in the first place and why they're really here. And it's to help people out. So help me in supporting these programs by finding other members of Congress and telling those stories that you know potentially and probably better than I do, bringing it home to them. Because that, at the end of the day, is what makes a difference. We see all sorts of stats and numbers and all the time. And that's important, but those stories that hit home, I believe, will make a difference. So no matter what the issue is, no matter what it is I'm voting on, whatever comes to my desk, you know, I don't look at it and say, you know, here's what the Democrats are doing, or here's what the Republicans are doing, and play that partisan game. I look at it and I say, you know, how is that legislation going to affect the district that I represent? You know, how does it represent, what does it mean for the state that I represent, for our country? And then how does it sit inside? You know, if you keep that same sort of priority list, I ended up with, as David said, the top 5% most independent voting record in Congress. Because both parties have some good ideas and some bad ideas. They're not always all right or wrong. You got to look at each individual bill for its merits. So I'm going to continue to be that independent voice and do what I think is best. Right? Standing up and advocating for programs like this. You know, ensuring that everything I do is looking for that common ground where we can actually solve a problem. Understand you're not going to get 100% of what you want, but heck, if you get 80% there, take that deal. Move on to the next issue. When I first started campaigning, I was talking to my family. And again, I'm a private sector guy. I'm not a lifetime career politician. And so I was talking about a couple issues and policy ideas I had to my family. And I realized very quickly I was never going to get everybody, even within my family, to agree. Right? You all know. And I have one brother. He might be, supporter of the Tea Party. I'm not exactly sure. He's a bit more conservative than I am. And I got another brother who hardly knows what Congress is. So, and that might be similar to a lot of families, where you just have the whole spectrum, of folks. And I realized right then and there, I'm never going to make everyone happy. You study the issue, you get to know it, you do what you think is best. Right? You take that vote, and you keep learning. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Use them proportionally. So you're always listening, always learning, but do what's best inside. Not because some party leader told you or not to do. You do what you think is best. These programs you're fighting for are a no-brainer. These make a difference in people's life. This, at the end of the day, I think is in large part what government needs to be doing, is helping people out, giving them those opportunities. I'm going to close just by thanking you for what you're doing. No need to thank me. It's easy. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for coming up here from wherever you're from in this country, coming all the way to D.C. I'm sure you got other things you want to do, but it does mean a lot that you're here, whether you're advocating to myself, to other members of Congress, Senate, etc. And David, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for what you do. Thank you all.